Part 16. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 151. Gu Jingyun and Gu Beizu changed their previous depression and looked at the majestic city wall, their eyes bright and full of yearning. Sister-in-law, is this the capital? Is it really much bigger than Guangling Mansion? There are many delicious food and fun sideshows in it. Does anyone we meet casually on the street have to be noble? If we accidentally collide with each other, will they just beat him to death with sticks as the script says? Suwan met their dark eyes, was silent, and answered one by one, the capital is as big as 2 Guangling mansions. There are many delicious and fun places, and there are many noble people. Not everyone is arrogant and unreasonable. So, don't run around. When you go out, follow your brother and me. The two little guys nodded obediently. Suwan glanced at Jug. The closer she got to the capital, the more silent she became. Her original expectations and joy of being reunited all turned into uneasiness. Your brother has been looking for you. He will be very happy to see you. Jug bit his lip. I know. I still have things to do today. I will take you to find Juyu early tomorrow morning. Good. When they stayed in Fukan before, Suwan arranged for several Qi family soldiers to go to the capital in advance to clean up the house. Who volunteered to go to the capital in advance to help arrange the house. The carriage entered the city gate, and Gu Beizu, Gu Jingyun, Gu Mu, and Ju Ji all went to the window to see the capital. The capital city is very prosperous, with peddlers and mercenaries selling a dazzling array of things to buy. After passing through most of the capital, the carriage stopped at a mansion. A group of people got out of the carriage. The door to the house opens. Mrs. who came out with a smile on her face, Chi Lu expects you to come this morning. Breakfast is already prepared. Come in and eat quickly. Gu's mother stood at the door, looking at the clean and tidy streets. This alley was full of magnificent houses. When she saw that the people who lived there were not ordinary people, she felt very uneasy. Mom, let's go in first. You should be tired after a long journey. After eating, wash up and go back to the house to rest. Suwan took Gu's mother's arm and led Gu Beizu into the house. She has never been to this house. It has carved beams and painted pillars, flying pavilions and flowing elixirs, and a majestic demeanor. Bypassing the wall shadow, there is the main room, which is filled with treasures, each of which exudes the smell of money. Mrs. who saw Suwan staring at the furnishings and whispered, every room has a duobao pavilion with many of these objects. Suwan. Even if she doesn't struggle and sells her belongings to make ends meet, she can live the rest of her life richly. Suwan's curiosity about the regent became more and more intense. We originally thought we had to buy all the bedding, but it turned out that all of them were ready-made. They were all new, very soft to the touch, and even scented. Mrs. whose eyes were opened yesterday. They live in the back row room, which is specially used for servants. There were quilts inside, and lying on them was as soft as sleeping on clouds. She had never slept so soundly in her life, and she almost couldn't get up from such a soft mattress today. We moved them all out and dried them. Thank you for your hard work. Suwan felt uncomfortable all over and wanted to take a bath. Do you have hot water? Yes, there are several stoves, all boiling water. Mrs. who went to set breakfast. Chi Jiajin moved the boxes and cages in and placed them in their own rooms. Suwan hurriedly finished her breakfast and went to Philia Pavilion to wash up and tidy up. When she came out, she saw that Gu Huizi had already packed everything and was sitting in the outer room waiting for her. Huizi, I'm going to see the regent now. He has given me so many valuable things. What gift should I give him? Suwan was worried. The regent was not short of money, and he was very particular about giving him what he wanted. Do you know what he likes? The regent has no desires and wants, and the only person he wants is no longer alive. Gu Huizi's eyes fell on Su Wan's face. A pair of phoenix eyes were very much like the eyes of the person in the portrait in the Prince Regent's study. His long fingers fell on the ends of her eyes and whispered, "Save him, one life is all it takes." His sleeves were scented with aloes, his fingers were touched by the coolness of autumn, and the skin he touched at the end of his eyes was burning. Su Wan blinked and didn't dare to move. "Aren't your eyes clean?" "There's an eyelash on it." Gu Huizi lightly scratched it with his fingertips. Su Wan rubbed her fingers together and said, "Do you want to go with me?" "Okay." Gu Huizi didn't think about it. The two of them left the house together. Moun and Mo Chen stood beside the carriage and were suddenly shocked when they saw their master coming out with his mistress. Is the master planning to confess to the mistress? Mo Chen couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for his master. Moun felt that his master was enlightened. They had different ideas and escorted the couple to the regent's palace. The carriage stopped in front of the Prince Regent's palace. Su Wan opened the curtain and saw someone visiting with gifts. Luo Cheng turned him away. She pursed her lips, a little worried that she wouldn't be able to see the regent. "Miss Su," Luo Cheng saw Su Wan at a glance, opened the door of the palace, and strode to the carriage. "Are you here to see the regent?" "Exactly." Su Wan got off the carriage. "I heard that the regent was ill, so I came here to visit him and thank him for the generous gift he gave me." Luo Cheng suddenly thought of something, the joy in his brows disappeared, and he hesitated and said, "The prince is not in good health, so I will thank you behind closed doors. I have to go and ask for his instructions first." "Good work." Luo Cheng saw the carriage curtain move and Gu Huizi come out of it. His eyes flashed, he turned around and quickly rushed into the mansion, running away to the main courtyard. Cough, cough. Several muffled coughs came from the inner room. Luo Cheng paused and knocked on the door. Without waiting for the regent to speak, he pushed the door open and walked in. The room was deserted. The regent was sitting on the couch with his coat on, and was approving official documents. A bowl of cooled medicine is placed in the upper left corner of the small table without moving at all. "Master, Miss Su is here to visit you. She knows medical skills and should be treating you." Luo Cheng pointed to the medicine bowl. "I will warm the medicine and bring it to you to eat." "I won't eat," the regent said without any hesitation. "No." Luo Cheng looked at the regent in surprise. Most of his face was immersed in shadow, and his outline looked particularly deep and sharp. This serious illness was coming fiercely, and his figure was still majestic, but his chin had become thinner. He couldn't help but said, "I'm afraid Miss Su will be injured." When he met the regent's cold eyes, the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and said quickly, "Master Gu is here, do you want to see him?" The regent remained silent, leaving only the rustling of official documents. Luo Cheng felt happy, he agreed. The regent did not see Miss Su. "Mr. Gu brings people in, but that has nothing to do with him." He quickly flew to the door of the house, faced Su Wan, and glanced at Gu Huizi. "The regent wants to see you." Gu Huizi's heart moved. He took Su Wan's hand and took her to the main courtyard. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 152. Gu Huizi looked at the looming majestic pavilion with a serious look on his face. The regent didn't want to see Su Wan, as he didn't know if it would embarrass her or make her angry. Today, he personally brought Su Wan to the regent in order to expose his identity to Su Wan. Gu Huizi frowned, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. Would she blame him for concealing something and not being open and honest enough? This hurdle must be crossed sooner or later. Gu Huizi's steps were steady and without any hesitation. After a moment, he stopped at the entrance of the main courtyard. Luo Cheng arrived late. He coughed, "You won't go in. Don't you need to pass it through?" Su Wan's eyes were full of doubts. Luo Cheng coughed again, glanced at Gu Huizi guiltily, and shook his head. No need to pass the message, the prince wants to see you, just go in. Anyway, he didn't believe that the regent would punish Suwon. At most he would be angry with him afterwards, and Gu Huizi would be there to share the burden anyway. Suwon looked at the three-story attic, with its golden towers, jade inlays and carved railings. Every detail was exquisitely carved, and it looked very spectacular. It was much higher than ordinary pavilions. The feng shui here is very good. Standing on the third floor, you can have a panoramic view of the capital. Luo Cheng chuckled. Miss Su can go up to the third floor to take a look when she is free. Suwon didn't have this idea. The regent was tolerant to her because of her mother's sake. She couldn't push her too far. Shall we go in together? Suwon thought of the rumors about the regent's moodiness and hesitated in her heart. Why don't you wait for me outside? If she offends the regent and is punished, Gu Huizi can still rescue her. If two people go in together, they will suffer together. Luo Chen was horrified. You two go in together. Suwon went in alone, and he was acting against his will. Wasn't it all his fault? The regent is not in good health. If you don't go in quickly, you won't see the guests after taking a rest, Luo Chen urged. Gu Huizi glanced at Luo Chen meaningfully. Let's go. Isn't it good, eh? Slow down. Suwon was led to the door by Gu Huizi. Knock knock. Gu Huizi raised his hand and knocked on the door. A deep and hoarse voice came from inside, come in. Gu Huizi opened the door, and the light from outside instantly poured into the room, dispersing the deserted room. The two people walked slowly to the inner room. The regent had his back to the door, and as soon as he sat down on the couch, his whole body felt like the green pines and cypresses were rising from the ground and leaning against the sky, making him majestic. Maybe he was surrounded by close people, and because he was ill, his reaction was a little slow. It wasn't until the footsteps were close to his ears that he noticed two footsteps, one of which belonged to a woman. The regent looked sideways, with a pair of cold and sharp eyes, like sharp swords on a snowy night, exuding a strong and murderous aura. Suwon paused, squeezed Gu Huizi's hand nervously, and saluted. Junior Suwon pays homage to the prince. The regent stared at Suwon with burning eyes. If it weren't for his elegant temperament and attire, he might have seen Chi Mi, and the same eyebrows and eyes were almost carved from the same mold. There was no resemblance to Sujihong in this young and beautiful face. This was the second time I saw Suwon in so many years. The first time was shortly after Chi Min gave birth. He heard that the child was born prematurely and was only more than 8 months pregnant. At that moment, the blood all over his body was boiling, his heartbeat was beating rapidly, and a thought jumped into his heart. He rushed back to the capital desperately, wanting to ask if this was his child. Chi Min denied it. She said that the child was born prematurely and weakly because of the accident. If it were his child, it would be full term, so how could it be as thin as a kitten and almost impossible to feed? She also said, when I marry Sujihong, I will be his wife. Even if I have your child, I will not let him be born. In order to dispel his doubts, Chi Min asked Suwon to make a marriage contract with the prince. Disappointment and pain came overwhelmingly, and the regent felt that he was possessed by a demon, which was why Chi Min behaved like this. He left the capital overnight and soon heard the news of Chi Min's death. Every year since then, he would send a gift to Suwon on her birthday, but he had never met her. What I was afraid of was seeing the shadow of Sujihong on this face. The regent stared at her face intently for a while, and felt that he was ridiculous. So what if she didn't look like Sujihong? What flows in the veins is Sujihong's blood. He looked away indifferently, and his eyes fell on Gu Huizi. He clenched his left hand into a fist, put it to his lips and coughed a few times. Ting Yuan, what do you want from the high school in this provincial examination? Father, Ting Yuan only wishes you good health and nothing else. Gu Huizi bowed his hands and stood up to salute. Suwon looked at Gu Huizi in shock, and then at the regent who looked as usual, her mind a little confused. Gu Huizi is the adopted son of the regent? That young man in the book who is as talented as Zhao Wei and as famous as Zhao Wei? He was also the adopted son who died of a serious illness and never showed his true face to others. Suwan had long expected that Gu Huizi had an identity, which might not be simple, but she never expected that he would hide it so deeply. When fighting against the prince and Juyu, he could obviously use his identity as the adopted son of the regent, so he should have a greater chance of winning. Why would he fake his death and escape from the regent's influence? Could it be that Gu Huizi and the regent also have a plastic father-son relationship? Or something happened to the regent? This level of status would do no harm to Gu Huizi. Suddenly, Suwan thought of the regent's current illness. According to the timeline, could it be that the regent died of illness? Suwan pinched her nails. No matter how big the wave was inside, she remained calm on the outside. Your Majesty, I know some techniques of discriminating yellow, why don't I take your pulse? Suwan suppressed her emotions and first checked the regent's pulse to see what kind of disease he had. The regent was very cold, no need. Suwan's appearance reminded the regent of many unpleasant things, and he was in a depressed mood. Impatience appeared on his face and eyes, and his deep voice contained anger. Luo Chang, see you off. Father, in desperation, Suwan followed Gu Huizi and called him foster father. She remembered that when the regent saw her before, he was obviously angry and unhappy. A thought came to her mind that the regent wanted to see not her, but Gu Huizi. Otherwise, when she asked Gu Huizi to stay outside the hospital, why would Luo Cheng react so strongly and have to urge them both to come in together? She came in against the regent's wishes, and he did not get angry and blame her. Suwan guessed that as long as she didn't go too far, the regent would tolerate her. Suwan became bolder and walked over bravely. Seeing that the regent seemed slightly lost in thought when he heard her address, this suspicion became more certain in his mind. I'm offended. Suwan, with quick eyes and quick hands, grabbed the regent's wrist and pressed 2 fingers on his pulse. The regent was shocked and angry. When he raised his hand, Suwan exclaimed, "It hurts." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 153. When the regent heard her cry out in pain, he paused and subconsciously let go. There was a hint of panic in his cold eyes, but he quickly put it away, and stared at Suwan's wrinkled face with a frown. Your Majesty, you are going to break my hand. She forced a little mist out of Suwan's eyes. She looked like her mother, and the Prince Regent's tolerance for her came largely from her face. Knowing the regent's physical condition, Suwan had no choice but to shamelessly take advantage of her advantage in front of the regent. Look, Suwan handed over her red wrist thoughtfully. The regent's face was tense, his chin tightened, and he stared at her slender wrist. The red mark was particularly eye-catching. He moved his eyebrows, thinking that she was too useless. Chi Min has a slender frame, but can sweep through thousands of armies. Not so vulnerable. My hand won't be sprained, right? Suwan said this. The hand that was said to be sprained quickly grasped the regent's wrist again. The moment he made a move, she hissed a cry, "It hurts." The veins on the regent's forehead twitched. Anyone who dared to be so presumptuous in front of him has already become a man. He glanced at the red mark on her wrist, raised his eyes, touched her misty eyes, and pretended to be pitiful. The regent looked away and couldn't figure out how Chi Min could give birth to such a scoundrel. It must be Sujihong's bloodline that is causing trouble. Suwan got what she wanted, but instead of relaxing, her eyebrows tightened even more. The regent was uncooperative and interfered with the pulse. Suwan withdrew her hand and stood beside Gu Huizi. How is your adoptive father's health? Seeing her solemn expression, Gu Huizi couldn't help but guess that the situation was not optimistic. Suwan shook her head and said nothing. The regent adjusted his sleeve slowly. If there is nothing else to do, you can go back. There is no need to perform filial piety in front of me. Ting Yuan has something to discuss with his adoptive father. Suwan withdrew with a wink, planning to ask Luo Cheng to inquire about the regent's condition. The door closed, and Gu Huizi sat opposite the regent. Jingyun comes to the capital, and I plan to ask the old gentleman to teach him. Your teacher, the regent said with unclear meaning. If you follow me, he will expel you from the teacher's school. If he knows Jingyun's identity, he will not accept him as a student. The former chief minister of the cabinet was extremely stubborn. In order to fight against the regent, he retired and returned home. According to the laws and regulations of the Great Zhou dynasty, those who inherit the great authority should establish elders rather than direct descendants. Gu Jingyun wanted to overthrow the prince, but with his pedantic and stubborn attitude, how could he be willing to teach him? Gu Huizi was silent. His senior brother asked Suwan to be a lobbyist and he would show up at the senior's longevity banquet to show his weakness. Suwan went to Beijing in advance, and Gu Huizi went alone to celebrate his teacher's birthday. The senior brother told him with a sad face, "Sir, he left Zai-town early for important matters. His only wish is for you to take the right path. He was very happy to hear that you took the provincial examination." Gu Huizi said nothing. Dean Lin patted him on the shoulder and said sincerely, "You will live up to your teacher's kindness and you will live up to yourself." Gu Huizi broke free from his memories. Precisely because of Gu Jingyun's special status, he had to be extra cautious when choosing his wife. The teacher is his husband, and he has accepted Gu Jingyun as a close disciple. Even if it attracts the attention of others, with his status, people will not think too much about him. If you invite other great scholars, you will inevitably attract attention. Gu Huizi whispered, "Teacher is not a stubborn person. The regent has great power, and Gu Huizi recognizes him as his adoptive father. He has already arranged Gu Huizi's future." But Gu Huizi took part in the imperial examination. Although the regent could not understand, he vaguely understood why he did this. To some extent, Gu Huizi is similar to Mr. Zhang. Just as stubborn. It's up to you. Jingyun will enter the East Palace in early summer at the latest. The regent's throat felt itchy, he coughed violently, and there was a fishy sweetness in his throat. He took out his handkerchief, wiped his mouth, and put it into his sleeve. "You go and ask Luo Cheng to come in." Gu Huizi's expression was solemn. He was particularly sensitive to the smell of blood. His eyes glanced at the pale color of the regent's lips, and he knew that he was seriously ill, so he was so eager to push Jingyun to that position. He left the inner room with a heavy heart. Suwan walked out of the house and saw Luo Cheng pacing back and forth at the entrance of the courtyard. She raised her eyebrows and stepped over. "The regent doesn't want to see me? Is it Gu Huizi he wants to see?" Luo Cheng's expression froze and he said with a sneer, "What's the difference between meeting you and meeting Mr. Gu? You two are husband and wife. Is there any problem with meeting your adoptive father together?" Suwan choked and wanted to ask why Gu Huizi was the adopted son of the regent. After thinking about it, she put the thought aside and settled the accounts with Gu Huizi in person later. "How is the regent's health?" Suwan went straight to the point. Luo Cheng was stunned for a moment, and said with a serious expression, "It's not very good. I don't know the specific situation. The imperial doctor only told me not to let the prince be tired and stay in bed to recuperate. The prince is not an obedient person. He goes to the court as usual. The military camp will only be closed for these 2 days." Luo Cheng didn't feel happy when the regent didn't go out. Instead, he felt even more uneasy. This shows that the regent's health is getting worse. "Have you checked the prince's pulse? How is his condition?" Luo Cheng sounded a little anxious. Suwon said helplessly, "Your Majesty doesn't seem to want everyone to know about his physical condition. When I took my pulse, he interfered with it, so I asked you to find out the situation." She bit her lip and thought for a moment. "You show me the medicine that the prince has taken." Luo Cheng did not dare to delay, so he immediately took Suwon to the kitchen, took out the medicine bag and handed it to her. "All the medicines you take every day are here." The imperial doctor also prescribed a bottle of medicine. "It is in the hands of the prince and not in our hands." "Which imperial physician is diagnosing the prince's illness?" Suwon opened the medicine package and carefully identified the medicine inside. The more she looked at it, the more her eyebrows tightened. This medicine was used to regulate the body and nourish qi and blood. The regent kept his physical condition very secret, and even his closest confidants did not know about it. Mr. Luo Cheng was not stupid and said immediately, "I wonder when Miss Su will be free? I will recommend you to see Dr. Lu tonight." Dr. Lu had to be on duty in the palace during the day. If Suwon Mao went to see him rashly, it would attract the attention of the regent. "Okay, I'll make the arrangements." Luo Cheng was very grateful that Suwon was so concerned about the regent's affairs. The two of them returned to the main courtyard, and Gu Huizi happened to come out of it. "Luo Cheng, the prince invites you to come in." Luo Cheng's scalp was numb, but he didn't dare to delay and quickly entered the house. When Suwon and Gu Huizi returned home, she said, "According to Luo Cheng, the regent's condition is probably not optimistic. He kept it a secret. The medicine he took was tonic and used as a blindfold. I'm going to go there tonight. Meet Dr. Lu and tell him a story." "Good." Suwon was silent for a moment, then said in a calm voice, "So, you don't have anything to say to me?" The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 154. Gu Huizi was silent, so he naturally knew what Suwon was asking. When the family went to Beijing, there were some things that Suwon needed to know about in order to take precautions in time. Jingyun is the son of the queen. After he was born, he was taken away by the queen's wet nurse. He was chased and fled to Guangling Mansion. The second brother was seriously ill at that time. My mother met him when she took him to the county town. The second brother was seriously ill and died. The queen's wet nurse died of a serious injury, and my mother raised Jingyun as her second brother, a kind of spiritual sustenance for her, and she loved him as much as her own. When Jingyun was 2 years old, the regent's people came for him. He gave him two choices: I would accept him as my adoptive father or he would take Jingyun away. Gu Huizi was only 12 or 13 years old at that time, so how could he fight against the regent? Gu's mother had suffered the pain of losing her husband and her son, and her mental state was not good for a time. She placed all her feelings for her second brother on Jingyun, and her condition began to improve. If she was taken away by the regent, she would collapse no matter how strong she was. Gu Huizi complied with the regent's wishes and recognized him as his adoptive father. He left Xinghua village on the grounds of seeking medical treatment and lived in the regent's palace, where he was cultivated by the regent. The regent has observed Jingyun. He is extremely smart, so he chose him as the crown prince. He wants to overthrow the prince and support Jingyun to ascend to the throne. I am close to Jingyun and will definitely do my best to help him, so he will recognize me as an adopted son. Gu Huizi told the story of his relationship with the regent in a few words. Suwon was shocked. Is Gu Jingyun the queen's son? In the book, Gu Jingyun is dead. So Gu Huizi is useless to the regent? Why did Gu Huizi let Ting Yuan die? Does the queen know? Gu Huizi shook his head. The queen didn't go looking for her, so she didn't know about it. The queen's first eldest son died of illness, and she didn't know there was something fishy. Later, when she was pregnant with Jingyun, she discovered that fetal medicine had been dropped into the food. She didn't say anything about it, but secretly went to search and found out the truth behind the death of the emperor's eldest son. Not because he died of illness, but because he was murdered. In order to protect her second child, the queen teamed up with people around her to plan to steal the baby and turn it into a phoenix. When the real child was born, she would move out of the palace and get a stillborn child to pretend to be the queen's child. After 100 secrets, the news leaked out, and the wet nurse and Jingyun were hunted down. The queen did not know whether the child was alive or dead and did not dare to look for it. There was a thought in my heart that as long as I didn't look for it, the child would definitely still be alive. If he finds it, even if he is alive, it will bring disaster to him. The queen does not seek prosperity and wealth for her children, but only seeks safe growth. After hearing this, Suwon felt sad in her heart. The person who could make the queen so fearful of murdering her child was none other than Emperor Jing, right? The queen's natal family was very powerful, and the Duke of Zhen was also her backer. The emperor's eldest son was young and very smart, so there was too much momentum to make him the prince. Whether he was the eldest son or the direct descendant, the prince would always be the emperor's eldest son. Is it inevitable that the country will fall by the wayside, and Emperor Jing will poison the tiger and eat the child? Suwon thought about the poison in Emperor Jing. The regent planned to wait for Emperor Jing to be poisoned, then take control of the government and promote Jingyun to the throne. When are you going to tell the queen? Emperor Jing is seriously ill. Suwon took a deep breath, feeling too hummed up. Gu Jingyun went from a golden pimple to a hot potato. If Suwon knew Gu Jingyun's life experience, he would not force Gu's mother to come to the capital. I'll think about it again. If it doesn't work, arrange for someone to escort my mother, second brother and third sister back to Xinghua village. Suwon raised her hand and knocked on her forehead. No, if we go to Beijing in a big way, I'm afraid we will already attract the attention of interested people. This sending them back when the time comes will be self-defeating. The most dangerous place is also the safest place. Some people are suspicious of the regent's aftermath, and there is no evidence to prove that Jingyun is the prince. Gu Huizi rubbed his brow bones. In 1 year at the latest, I will please ask the teacher to accept Jingyun as a student. If he doesn't show up in the academy, there is a high probability that he will not be recognized. Suwon let out a breath and said angrily, you recognize the regent as your adoptive father. You don't have to worry about your future. You can become an emperor's master at the worst possible time, so why do you need to take the imperial examination? Suwon gritted his teeth and asked Gu why he was so tight-lipped that the family lived a rough and tumble life, but he would never improve his life. He was too cautious. Being careful can catch cicadas of thousands of years, and being careful can sail a ship of thousands of years. Suwon quite understood it, and she knew without even thinking that Gu Huizi had been walking on thin ice these past few years. One wrong step and you're in danger of being doomed. The identity of the regent is a double-edged sword. He has overwhelming power and can cover the sky with one hand. But he also has many enemies, and what he wants to do is too eye-catching. The regent has gradually decomposed his power and transferred it to our hands. Jing Yunruo will one day inherit the throne. The regent will succeed and retire. If I control the power of the regent, I am afraid that everyone will be watching my every move, which will be inconvenient. As my adopted son, I will let him die of illness and turn the power of the regent from bright to dark. Gu Huizi smiled. I use my identity as Gu Huizi to show others that I will not be too eye-catching. Convenient. Suwon. Tang Yuan with black sesame filling. On the surface, he looks like a humble gentleman, gentle and harmless, but when he turns around, he can stab someone with a cold knife. Who would doubt him? He was just a peasant boy who became an official with some talent and learning. Although the daughter-in-law came from a famous family, she severed ties with the family. Maybe we can even break into the enemy camp. Gu Huizi asked, do you still have any questions? Suwon turned her head and looked at him. Gu Huizi was wearing a sky blue gown. His black hair fell like a waterfall on his chest. His eyelids were lazily drooped. The sunlight was shining on his silhouette, making him look particularly gentle and soft, tempting people to get closer. As if she was bewitched, she leaned towards him. There was a faint smile on Gu Huizi's lips. Her eyes were dark and bright, and her white face was warm and soft, like a Persian cat he had seen before. He put his hand on her neck and pinched it gently. He pinched the skin of the back of her neck, and a numbness shot up to her limbs. Suwon was startled and woke up instantly. She leaned back and stayed away from him. No. Seeing her move away, Gu Huizi's deep eyes fell on his fingertips, as if the delicate and soft touch still remained. Suwon was so distracted that she put her hand on the back of her neck, wondering what she was thinking. It wasn't until the evening that Suwon recovered. She hurriedly finished her dinner and took Chi-Lu to Dr. Liu's house. The carriage stopped in the alley next to Liu's mansion. Suwon leaned against the wall of the carriage and waited for Luo Cheng. Knock knock. The carriage walls were knocked. Miss Luo Cheng's rough voice was low, especially clear in the silent night. Suwon. Opening the curtain, Suwon got out of the carriage. Mr. Lu just returned home, let's go now, Luo Cheng urged. Let's go. Suwon and Luo Cheng went to Lu mansion. Dr. Lu greeted them, and the two of them entered the Lu mansion smoothly. The housekeeper personally led the two of them to the study. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 155. When Imperial Physician Lu left the palace, he was blocked by Luo Cheng, who was squatting secretly. For the sake of the regent, Imperial Physician Lu agreed to meet his friend and discuss their medical skills. Upon entering the mansion, Dr. Lu stayed in the study to wait for others. Sir, Mr. Luo is here. The housekeeper glanced at Suwon with complicated eyes, but he did not inform her of her identity. Dr. Liu's old voice came out, come in. The housekeeper opened the door and invited Luo Cheng and Suwon in. Dr. Lu was looking through medical texts. He looked up at the door. When he saw Suwon, his eyebrows twitched. He looked at Luo Cheng with sharp eyes and shouted, nonsense. Is this your friend who knows medical skills? Master Lu, people should not be judged by their appearance. Miss Su's master is Master Wyron, and her medical skills are not low. When Ms Su was seriously ill, the imperial doctors were helpless, but she cured her. General Luo Chenji said, don't look at it. She is young, so your medical skills may not be as good as hers. Even if you beat her, you will still be 3, 4, or 5 rounds ahead of her. Dr. Liu's face darkened. Luo Cheng seemed to be completely unaware. Before, she was not well known because she was a lady from a famous family and could not be seen in the public eye. Later, after she got married, she was too poor to live that life. She had no choice but to go out as a weak woman to practice medicine and support her family. She was lucky and accidentally opened a medical clinic in the town and became known as a miracle doctor. Even the military doctor admired her and recommended her to the prince to treat Marquis Ding Yuan. By the way, you should know about the wound medicine used in the military camp, right? Military Doctor Lu sent some to the palace, and you also praised it. Luo Cheng pointed his thumb at Suwon. Hey, she developed it? Dr. Liu's beard trembled. It was so unexpected that his big eyes widened, making him look a bit funny. So it was you who developed it? Dr. Lu got the medicine and it was very effective. He wrote to Dr. Lu asking who made the medicine and asked Dr. Lu to recommend him. Dr. Lu planned to get the person to the Imperial Pharmacy Bureau. I didn't wait for Dr. Liu's letter, but I met him first. Dr. Lu, the famous Dr. Suwon, had heard of it, but Suwon couldn't cure Ding Yuan Ho, and because of Suwon's age, he was a bit biased. I think she is very ambitious despite her young age, and she brags about herself and blows away her reputation. I never imagined that I really had 2 brushes. I made you laugh. Suwon bowed politely. Dr. Liu's eyes were eager. Come on, tell me, how did you come up with this prescription? How long did it take to develop it? What should Suwon say? Did she rely on the fact that she came from a later age and took the essence of other people's prescriptions and discarded the dross to develop the medicine? She said conservatively, 1 year. Dr. Lu was excited. You can develop such a miraculous medicine for wounds in 1 year, which shows that you have great talent in medical skills. Are you willing to discuss with me? If you have good medical skills, I will recommend you to the Imperial Medicine Bureau. Master Lu, as a doctor, I treat illnesses for the common people. As nobles in the palace, you are enough. I like freedom. If I am confined in the palace, my talent will be blunted. Suwon knew that the regent had concealed his illness. He was very strict. He asked Imperial Physician Lu to treat him. If he tried to get advice from Imperial Physician Lu, he would probably fail. Still have to rely on outsmarting. She turned her eyes and said with a smile, how about this, let's compare our medical skills, and if you think you're qualified, I also have a newly developed special medicine for typhoid fever, which I can supply to you unconditionally. But you have to promise me something. Conditions, no regrets. Dr. Lu was not fooled, and his excitement faded like a tide. He clasped his hands behind his back. He looked at Luo Chen behind Suwon. What else didn't he understand? I'm afraid I came here about the regent. Except for the regent, I can promise you other things. I'm only here for this one thing. Suwon held a small white glazed medicine bottle in her hand and threw it towards Dr. Lu. I'll give you this bottle of medicine first. You should think about it carefully. Dr. Lu hurriedly held it and glared at the confident Suwon. You have given up your mind and there is no room for consideration. Yes, I don't have to get the answer from you. Today I went to the regent's mansion and took the regent's pulse. Isn't it poisoning? I came here this time to discuss the treatment plan with you. Since you agreed, I won't force you to keep silent for the sake of the regent. Suwon looked regretful and said to Luo Chen, let's go, don't disturb Mr. Liu's rest. You, how did you? Dr. Lu was so shocked that he was speechless for a moment. As soon as the words came out, he came back to his senses and said cautiously, tell me, what is the situation of the regent? Suwon's heart sank. Her words were deceiving Imperial Physician Lu. Judging from his reaction, the regent was really poisoned. She couldn't help but think of Gu Huizi's poison, and she couldn't help but make a bold guess that the regent was poisoned by the same kind of poison as him. Leave the soul. Suwon spat out 2 words. Dr. Liu's expression changed drastically. Suwon's heart dropped from her throat, telling her that she had guessed correctly. Gu Hui was hit by Li Hun, and the regent was hit again. They were both extremely cautious people. Under such circumstances, if someone poisoned them, it was most likely someone close to them. There are several ways to poison Li Hun. One is to take the poison directly, and the other is to use a medicine as a guide. If you take the two separately, they are non-toxic, but if you put them together, you will be infected. Poison. This poison will gradually corrode the bone marrow and damage the person's nerves. Therefore, when the poison occurs, the person loses his mind and can be controlled by others, hence the name Li Unsing the soul. This kind of poison is very harmful. Half an hour after the poison takes effect, the person's body will feel as if he has been cut into pieces by 1,000 cuts. After being manipulated to achieve his goal, he will die. It was first used for interrogation, but later it was used to harm others. The late emperor listed this poison as a banned drug. Miss Su, this matter must be kept in your stomach and not made public, Dr. Lu said with a serious look on his face. Suwon knew that Dr. Lu was thinking about her safety. I will remember it. Dr. Lu hurriedly walked a few steps in the room, and finally sighed heavily. Can you cure it? His head was as big as a bucket and he said, there is no antidote for this poison, I just suppress it? The regent's adopted son was also infected. After so many years, no one has been able to cure him. The reason why it was so long was that the regent was much more serious than him. He had never been cured of his old injuries during the previous battles. It's more than just detoxification. Suwon felt a thump in her heart. The regent was unwilling to cooperate, which would be very difficult. I can detoxify it. You can. Seeing Dr. Liu's fierce reaction, Suwon raised the corners of her lips and smiled maliciously, but I need Dr. Liu's cooperation. She whispered a few words into Dr. Liu's ear. After hearing her stupid move, Dr. Liu was so shocked that his eyes almost fell out of his head. The author has something to say. Babies, see you tomorrow, good night, okay. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 156. Master Lu, it depends on you whether we can cure the Prince Regent. Suwon had no way to contact the Prince Regent and had to rely on Dr. Liu. But Dr. Liu is in danger. What if the Regent pursues him? Suwon was a little unsure whether Dr. Liu would be willing to help. On the one hand, Imperial Physician Liu wanted to cure the Regent, but on the other hand, he was worried about the Regent's future settlement. The Regent's character is a bit ungrateful. Only others are allowed to obey his orders. If you disobey him, even if it is for his own good, you may not be merciful. I'll think about it again. Dr. Liu didn't agree at all. If you come to me today, Luo Cheng should bring it. I'm afraid the news has already reached the ears of the Regent. If I ask for his pulse in the future, the Regent will without asking, I will help you this time. Thank you. Suwon bowed. Imperial Physician Liu waved his hand, I am also doing this for Dezhou. Suwon didn't ask any more questions, took Luo Cheng and left. Luo Cheng was shocked that the Regent's poison was the same as Gu Huizi. Gu Huizi's complexion has obviously improved, and his poison should be cured. That's why Suwon is so successful. Miss Su, Mr. Liu is unwilling to help. Even if you risk losing your head, my subordinates must find ways to let you detoxify the Regent. Luo Cheng looked very excited, as if he had seen the dawn. If you can cure the Regent, King, if you have any orders from now on, just tell me. Okay. Suwon was not polite to Luo Cheng. Suwon's eyes flashed slightly, she took out a bottle of medicine from her sleeve and handed it to Luo Cheng. If Mr. Liu doesn't help, just put this medicine into the medicine he takes. Luo Cheng said worriedly, the Regent won't take that medicine. Suwon sighed, just act accordingly. Say goodbye to Luo Cheng and get on the carriage. Qi Lu asked, Miss, where are you going? Suwon's heart moved, is the Qi family still there? Still. Go and have a look. The carriage drove to Qi's house. This street was full of high-ranking nobles, with green tiles and red eaves, numerous terraces and pavilions, and 2 stone lions at the door, looking majestic. Suwon got out of the carriage and looked at the neat courtyard. She couldn't help but be stunned. No one from the Qi family was there. She thought the house had been sealed off, but now it seemed that there were still people living there. Miss, please wait a moment, I'll knock on the door. Qi Lu stepped forward, held the copper ring on the red lacquer riveted door, and knocked. Who is it? The heavy door opened, and an old man with frost-white hair and beard stuck his head out. He recognized Suwon Lei at a glance. He came out of the door excitedly and bowed with a staggering step. Miss Cousin, I am the old housekeeper of Qi Mansion, please come in quickly. Suwon quickly helped the housekeeper and followed him into the house. She asked doubtfully, there is no one in the Qi family. Didn't the emperor take the house back? The emperor originally wanted to seal the house and give it to meritorious ministers in the future. It was the regent who saved it and said that the Qi family's bloodline has not been cut off, leaving it to you to deal with. You have not been here in these years, so I have been keeping it. Stay. The housekeeper's eyes filled with tears. The regent's original words were that it was up to Suwon to choose someone from the side to adopt him to the Qi family. I originally thought I couldn't wait for Suwon in this life, but I never thought she would come. You can choose from the side, or... The housekeeper suddenly thought of something and immediately changed his subject. The Su family has severed ties with you. You can return to the Qi family and inherit the Qi family. Suwon's heart moved and she said thoughtfully, let's choose from the side. After inheriting the Qi family, she was afraid that the court's eyes would be on her again, which would be detrimental to Gu Huizi. The housekeeper was disappointed, but he quickly regained his composure and said, that's fine. Is my mother's boudoir still there? Suwon looked at the huge general's mansion. It was spotless. It could be seen that the butler's intentions were less popular. I want to go and see it. Yes, yes, the housekeeper took Suwon to Bayun Pavilion. Suwon opened the door and saw that the yard was full of bright peonies. She stepped on the bluestone and came to the door. The housekeeper stepped forward and opened the lock. Dust came to her face. She fanned it with her hand and covered it with a handkerchief. Cover your mouth and nose and enter the house. This room has been locked since the young lady died of illness and has not been taken care of since then, the housekeeper explained. Suwon nodded slightly. You go and do your work, I'll just take a look. Hey, okay, the butler responded. As the last ray of light faded from the sky, the butler lit the oil lamp and exited Bayun Pavilion. Chi Lu was very discerning and waited at the door for Suwon. Suwon stood in the middle of the room. No one had entered the room for a long time. It was too deserted and had a faint musty smell. She glanced around the room by candlelight. The furnishings were very elegant, and the Duobeo pavilion was filled with rare treasures. She turned into the inner room, where there was a step-by-step bed, a soft couch by the window, and a round table with celadone tea sets, carved mahogany cabinets, and 2 boxes. Suwon walked to the couch, landed on one leg, and knelt on the couch with one knee, preparing to push the window open with both hands. Her strength was blocked. Suwon frowned and prepared to stand up straight. His feet slipped and there was a plop sound, and Suwon was half lying on the couch. Suwon bared her teeth and stood up with her hands on the couch. Suddenly, she felt something was wrong and pressed it on the couch. It seemed that something was loose. She squinted her eyes and opened the reed mat on the couch. The bottom was paved with wooden boards. She knocked on it, and all the sounds were hollow. She looked around and found a dagger with exquisite and complicated carvings on the ancient shelf. When she pulled it out, the blade glowed with a cold light. It's a good thing to see. She pried the board up along the gap, and placed a wooden box in the middle. Suwon took out the wooden box. It was not locked, but it was a mechanism. She tried to open it, to no avail. Suwon intuitively felt that the contents of the box were important, so she planned to take it back and slowly unlock the machine. Miss Cousin, are you having dinner here? The housekeeper's voice sounded outside. I've had dinner. Suwon opened the door, looked at the housekeeper's old face, and asked in a low voice, are there no mother's calligraphy and paintings in the house? The housekeeper sighed. When the young lady got married, she burned all the calligraphy and paintings. His eyes fell on the box in Suwon's hand. Can I get you a furoshiki? No need. Suwon spread her hands and the dagger lay in her palm. Is this dagger your mother's? The housekeeper had watched Chi Min grow up and had some impressions of her things. This was given to the young lady by the regent. Suwon's heart moved. If it was the regent, she suddenly had an idea. Can I take it away? The housekeeper had no objection. Of course, all the lady's things belong to my cousin. Suwon took away a wooden box and a dagger. Gu Huizi was not asleep yet and was working on official documents. Suwon put the box in front of him. Can you open it? Gu Huizi put down his pen, put the box in front of him, fiddled with it a few times, and with a pop sound, the lid of the wooden box popped open. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 157. Suwan was stunned for a moment. Is it that simple? Did you go to Su's house? Gu Huizi put the box in front of Suwan without looking at it. I'm going to Chi's house. Suwan sat cross-legged on the soft couch beside her, holding the box. The wooden box contained several letters and some small objects. The luster was very dim, as if it had experienced the vicissitudes of time. The fact that my mother cherished them so much and put them away in the wooden box shows that these things are very important to her. She doesn't need to think too much about it, but she knows that these things were given to her by the regent, right? Suwan picked up a small puppet and carved the girl's posture lifelike. The surface of the wood was very smooth, and it was covered with such a thin layer of paste because it was often played with in people's hands. The word Chi Min is carved into the wood on the flowing skirt. Suwan's eyes moved slightly, her thumb brushed over the two words. She put the puppet aside again, and took out several letters inside, all of which were letters written by the regent to her mother. She looked through each letter, including daily details, as if she was just telling her mother about his current situation. There are also red leaves conveying feelings, telling him how much he misses. When I saw the last letter, my eyes froze. Two surnames are united in marriage, and a contract is made together. A good relationship will last forever, and they will be matched with the same name. I would like to make a white-headed agreement and write it to Hongjian, so that the Red Leaf Alliance can be clearly recorded. This was a marriage letter written by the Prince Regent to his mother. There was a line of scrawled words at the end of the marriage letter. Unlike the strong and powerful handwriting at the front, Suwan guessed that it was written by his mother. Two places miss each other and are showered with snow at the same time, so this life can be regarded as the same. The date signed above was exactly 2 days before my mother's wedding. Suwan felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. An unforgettable relationship ended in tragedy. If my mother had agreed to the marriage contract, maybe she wouldn't have died. Suwan put all the letters in the box, and saw that there were two puppets, one large and one small, and took them out of curiosity. Only then did she realize that the carving of these two wood carvings was not skilled. The large wood carving is of a man, with an outline somewhat resembling a regent. The word Ji Xian is engraved on the hem of his robe. A small wooden sculpture with a smooth head and a small belly band engraved on its clothes. The word peace is engraved in the middle of the small belly band. It can be recognized that it is a little baby. Her fingertips touched a word behind her back, and she suddenly had a strange premonition in her heart. Her heartbeat gradually accelerated. She slowly opened the little doll's puppet, which was a line of birth dates. What's wrong? Gu Huizi noticed something was wrong with Suwan, closed the official document and walked over, seeing her staring at the puppet in her hand in a daze. Gu Huizi frowned, took the puppet in her hand, and saw the birth date on it, which was Suwan's birth date, and there was no difference. His eyes fell on the two puppets on the side. He picked them up and took a closer look. One was Chi Min and the other was Ji Xian. Suwan's figure was mixed in, showing some other meanings. Gu Huizi's eyes changed and he whispered, "What do you think?" "We are all the most important people in my mother's heart." Suwan didn't think about it. The three puppets mixed together made it easy for people to think too much and wonder whether they were a metaphor for a family of three. If she were the regent's child, Sujihong would have discovered that his mother was not perfect when he and his mother had a bridal chamber. With Sujihong's character, he would have used this incident to threaten his mother to achieve his own goals. But there was nothing strange about Sujihong, so there was only another guess. She and the regent were the most important people to her mother. Gu Huizi remained silent. There was no conclusive evidence for this kind of thing, so it really couldn't be made public. Otherwise, Chi Min's innocence would be stained and Suwon would fall into public opinion. The regent was poisoned by the same poison as you. Except for his reaction to arsenic, the rest of the medicine had no effect on him. I ordered Dr. Lu to give him acupuncture treatment and knock him out. If Dr. Lu didn't, if you dare to help, let Luo Cheng dissolve the antidote into the medicine the regent drank. The effect will definitely not be very good. Suwon's eyes fell on the box in her hand, and her eyes flashed with stars. I'll take this. Meet him and see if you can convince him. I'll take you there, Gu Huizi whispered. My foster father coughed up blood today. Suwon was shocked. Then we can't delay this matter. She quickly stuffed the things into the wooden box one by one, and picked out the one she had. Let's go now. Gu Huizi ordered someone to hitch the carriage. The two men went straight to the regent's palace. The regent was sitting behind a desk, approving the memorial. Luo Chen knelt on the ground, sweating, and said frankly, Master, I am worried about your condition. Miss Su is a miracle doctor, and I just took it upon myself to take her to see Dr. Lu. He swallowed hard and said in a trembling voice, Miss Su has detoxified Mr. Gu and will definitely be able to cure you. Did Lu Ren tell Suwon? The regent's ice-like voice echoed through the study. Luo Cheng felt a chill in his heart and quickly explained, no. Dr. Lu didn't say it. Miss Su was too shrewd and she faked it. The regent looked down upon life and death and was already tired. Go and receive the punishment yourself. Luo Cheng stood up from the ground with a sad face, ready to receive the punishment. At this time, the housekeeper preached outside, Your Majesty, Mr. Gu and Miss Su are here. Luo Cheng's eyes lit up, as if he had seen a savior. Before the regent could speak, the housekeeper continued, Miss Su said that she went to Chi's house and found something in her mother's room that she wanted to dedicate to you. The regent raised his eyebrows, remained silent for a long time, then coughed and said, Bring them in. Luo Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. The regent sneered, Do you need me to call someone to escort you to receive your punishment? Thunder rolled in from the sky, shattering Luo Cheng's slim hope, knowing that he would never escape. Just as they walked to the door, they met Suwon and Gu Huizi. Seeing Luo Cheng's resigned look, Suwon felt like she was in a mirror. Did the regent punish you? Luo Cheng smiled bitterly. Don't go, cook some medicine for me. If the regent wants to hold you accountable, I'll hold it for you. Suwon gave him a prescription and urged, Go quickly. Luo Cheng was overjoyed and patted his chest, I will definitely live up to my destiny. Suwon laughed, turned her head, and met the regent's piercing gaze. She opened her lips and showed a bright smile, Your Majesty, I just went to Chi's house and accidentally found something, which I specially brought to you. The regent's eyes fell on the wooden box in Suwon's hand, and he recognized it at first glance as belonging to Chi Mi, and she kept all the things he gave to Chi Min inside. I opened my mother's box and found this inside. She carved it with her own hands. Suwon placed a puppet in front of him and said, She replied to the marriage letter you gave her. The regent's eyes were filled with blood, his eyes were locked on the puppet, and he said solemnly, Marriage certificate. Do you want to see it? Suwon was not afraid of him and looked straight into the regent's sharp eyes. You promise me to detoxify you, and I will give it to you. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 158. The regent's face was cold and gloomy. From the time he came to power, no one dared to bargain with him. If it were someone else, he would just take it by force. But the person acting evil in front of me is Chi Min's daughter. If you don't cooperate with the treatment, you won't survive for many days. It's better to go underground and ask my mother in person. Suwon held the box in her arms a little tighter, with a bit of vigilance in her eyes, as if she was afraid of the regent. The king used all means to snatch it back. You can't take it away, and I don't want to give it to you. I would rather destroy it than fulfill it for others. The veins on the prince regent's forehead throbbed, and his fingers tightened, making the palms of his hands ache from the impact of the puppet. Suwon saw the veins on the back of his hands and the terrifying aura exuding from his body. She swallowed nervously. She was a little unsure whether the regent would become ruthless. If so, she would have to find another way. The regent's gaze was as sharp as a knife, as if he wanted to tear through Suwon's pretended calmness, just when she was about to lose her ability and wanted to find a compromise. He suddenly turned away his eyes, lowered his eyelashes and fell on the puppet in his hand, and sneered, "If you can't get something, even reaching out is unnecessary." Suwon was stunned and somehow understood the meaning of the regent's words. He couldn't get Chi-min, so the marriage certificate was not important to him. So, he doesn't want it anymore. Suwon's heart ached as if it was being squeezed tightly by an invisible hand. Such a high-ranking person can call the shots, and Chi-min is not by his side. Everything is just like this. "Don't you want to go to Ziliang to have a look?" Suwonbing rushed to see a doctor, just to arouse the regent's desire for survival. "I learned from Chi Guang that my maternal grandmother was from Ziliang, and my mother was half Ziliang. Chinese blood. Last time I went to Zhimiaogwan, I met Juya by chance, and his sister said that I looked very similar to her aunt." She opened her eyes and lied. After Chi Guang heard this, he said that my mother's wish was to visit the Ziliang kingdom in her lifetime and visit the place where my grandmother lived. "You don't want to go there and appreciate the customs and customs? On the way to Huangquan, you can tell me that she owes you, and she will marry you in her next life to pay off her debt." The regent sneered, as if he was mocking Suwon. It would be too disrespectful to use this trick of coaxing children to deal with him. Gu Huizi talked about the news he got today in a leisurely manner. "Father, spies from the Ziliang kingdom came to report that the person who had a relationship with General Qi was not the female general of the Ziliang kingdom, but the former. The queen has now abdicated in favor of her younger daughter." Suwon was surprised. Her grandmother was the queen? Are Juyu and Juji also members of the royal family of the Western Liang Kingdom? Gu Huizi dropped a piece of bombshell news. The spy said in the letter that the emperor's young daughter was separated since childhood and was found back more than 10 years later. The regent's thoughts followed Gu Huizi's words and he didn't notice anything was wrong at first. Gu Huizi never said unnecessary things. General Qi's wife is the empress of the Western Liang Kingdom, and the empress gave birth to a princess who disappeared since childhood. He suddenly thought that Chi-min was the daughter of the queen and General Qi. Is the missing daughter Chi-min? Being found back more than 10 years later, could it be? His eyes trembled and he suddenly looked at Gu Huizi. The second year after Qi's death, the supreme emperor of the West Liang Kingdom found the princess and appointed her as the crown prince. Gu Huizi couldn't help but look sideways at Suwon. All this was still speculation. After all, the queen of the West Liang Kingdom was not only General Qi. A man. When the queen went on a personal expedition, there was already a male queen in the palace, as well as several male concubines, who gave birth to the emperor's eldest daughter. Suwon felt a huge wave in her heart and looked at Gu Huizi blankly. She heard every word and sentence clearly, but she didn't understand what he meant. Isn't mother dead? Did she go to Ziliang Kingdom? With how much her mother loved her, how could she let her go? And the regent, if she becomes the queen, based on the regent's feelings for her, she will definitely be willing to go to the Western Liang Kingdom. Impossible. Suwon's retort came to her lips and stuck in her throat. She suddenly thought, could this be a way for Gu Huizi to make the regent want to live? So you deliberately released this news to confuse the regent? The regent went to Ziliang Kingdom to seek confirmation. By then, the poison in his body had been cured. Could he still kill himself? Suwon suppressed the surging emotions in her heart and just thought that she would seek further verification after she returned. She twitched the corners of her lips and asked, "Do you mean that my mother became the queen?" "It's just a guess." Gu Huizi glanced at the regent who was deep in thought, and deliberately raised a question at the right time. If MRSG had faked her death back then, someone would have discovered the clues at her funeral. Suwon was stunned and looked at Gu Huizi with complicated eyes, somewhat confused as to what he meant. Do you want to tell the Prince Regent that the Queen of Ziliang is her mother, or do you want to dispel the Prince Regent's guess and just tell the Prince Regent the true identity of her grandmother? The Regent knew something inside. Unlike Suwon's thoughts, Gu Huizi's words were not to undermine him, but to induce him to think deeper. After Qi Min died, General Qi used his power to take away Qi Min's body from Sujihong. Instead of giving Qi Min a grand burial, he buried it in the Qi family's ancestral grave in a low-key manner, without inviting colleagues, relatives, and friends to express condolences. The regent stood up suddenly and shouted coldly, "Zhang Cheng." A black shadow appeared in the inner room. Go to Ziliang Kingdom in person and investigate the Queen of Ziliang. The regent's hands folded in his wide sleeves could not suppress the trembling. His cold blood seemed to become hot and boiling at this moment. Once he thought of General Qi sending Qi Min, who had faked his death, to the Western Liang Kingdom. He wished he could rush to the Western Liang Kingdom immediately. When Suwon saw the regent reacting so violently, she knew that she had gone astray. Seeing the reaction of the regent, Gu Huizi knew that he had been tricked and thought of the weirdness of the funeral. Seeing Suwon's confusion, he whispered in her ear, "My mother-in-law's funeral was organized by the Qi family. It was buried in a low-key manner and no one else attended the funeral." Suwon suddenly realized that if this was the case, the speculation that her mother had faked her death would become more credible. "My lord, are you willing to receive treatment?" Suwon hugged the box and took a few steps forward. "Your condition is very serious. If my mother is really still alive, you will have no chance to renew your relationship with her. In the next life, who still remembers it? What if she promised it to someone else?" These words were like a sharp knife piercing the regent's heart, and it was heartbreaking. Suwon sighed deeply, walked to Gu Huizi, and tugged on his wide sleeves with her fingers. "The regent is unwilling to treat, so I won't force others to do anything. Let's go." Gu Huizi glanced at the regent, bowed his hands and said, "Father, please take care of yourself." Ting Yuan retires. The two people looked at each other and walked towards the door. "Who gave you permission to leave?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 159. The regent's cold voice sounded from behind. Suwon breathed a sigh of relief, a hint of joy appeared in her eyebrows, and winked at Gu Huizi. "Your adoptive father has agreed to diagnosis and treatment." Gu Huizi smiled slightly. "What happens next is up to you." Suwon raised her chin. "Just wait." Has the prince agreed to the treatment? Suwon handed the wooden box in her hand to Gu Huizi, looked at the regent and said, "I was begging you just now, so I used the marriage letter as a condition. Now you are begging me for treatment, then I will give you the marriage certificate after it is cured." The poem written by my mother in the marriage certificate was not a good word. For fear of irritating the regent, he would regret the treatment. The regent's eyes fell on the box and he snorted coldly, "I am ordering you." Suwon. "Okay, you always have the final say. Why do you insist on curing me?" The regent glanced at Gu Huizi and did not think it was what Gu Huizi meant. Although Gu Huizi considered him his adoptive father, the relationship between the two of them was more like a cooperative relationship. Once he dies, no one can control Gu Huizi, which will be more beneficial to Gu Huizi. "Thank you for sending me birthday gifts every year over the years. More importantly, you changed the marriage and did not let me marry the prince." Suwon thought that Emperor Jing even killed his own son just because he was afraid of the power behind the queen's mother's family. She has the blood of the Western Liang royal family in her body. After marrying the prince, she is afraid of living a life of dire straits. Based on the original owner's character, she was afraid that her life would still be lost. It would be 1,000 times harder for her to change her situation by dressing up as a palace concubine than it is now. The regent's face was solemn. He came out from behind the desk, walked to the soft couch and sat down, his arms resting on the small table. Suwon walked over quickly and rolled up his sleeves to check for pulse. His originally relaxed expression suddenly became serious. The regent's health was worse than she expected. Poison is not a problem for her. What mattered was the regent's old illness. Do your bones hurt when it's a rainy day? Suwon retracted her hand and quickly thought of a treatment plan in her mind. The regent said and said indifferently, it's a small matter. Suwon sneered, yeah, it's just a trivial matter that can kill you. The regent frowned, wondering if he was too lenient, which allowed Suwon to push forward and dare to contradict him. Just at this time, Luo Cheng came over with medicine. When he heard the last two sentences, his lips twitched and he stopped talking. Qi Min married Sujihong. It happened that the Tatars invaded and the regent took command to go out. He simply didn't want his life. With this fierce force, he directly captured the Tatars' home base. This beautiful victory left scars on his body, including a fatal wound. Luo Cheng's eyes fell on the regent's neck. There was a hideous scar there, and the sharp arrow almost grazed the main artery, just a hair's breadth away. Your Majesty, take the medicine. Luo Cheng looked away and put the medicine on the small table respectfully. The regent looked at the thick black concoction, which exuded a bitter smell, and frowned. Suwon silently took out a purse from her sleeve pocket, took out a piece of candy, and placed it on a clean plate next to it. This can suppress the bitterness. The regent's brows furrowed even more tightly. He seemed to be stimulated by Suwon's move, so he picked up the bowl and drank in one gulp. Luo Cheng almost cried with joy. Oh my God, my master is finally willing to take medicine. Suwon asked for a pen, ink, paper, and inkstone, wrote down a prescription and handed it to Luo Cheng. This prescription is for the prince to take a medicated bath. You grab 3 sets of medicine and give the prince a medicinal bath every day for 2/4 of an hour at a time. After the medicinal bath, I'll take the prince's pulse again. She pointed to the empty bowl on the table and added, take this medicine twice a day for half a month. The regent's health was very poor, so medicinal bath was the best choice. It could promote blood circulation, regulate meridians and organs, strengthen bones and tendons, warm tendons, and dispel cold. Thinking of setting bones and tendons, another recipe came to Suwon's mind, which was black jade breaking ointment. Shaolin Temple combines Zen, martial arts, and medicine into one, with Zen and medicine being the most low-key and mysterious. The most famous one is black jade intermittent paste, which is made from 108 herbs, and the process is very complicated. Grandpa once told her that when making this intermittent ointment, 10% is inside the medicine and 90% is outside the medicine. The process, heat, and climate are very particular. If it is refined, it will have a miraculous effect on bones and tendons. Wait a minute. Suwon took the prescription from Luo Cheng and added a hint. Luo Cheng immediately went to grab medicine. Take your medicine on time, and I'll come back in 3 days. After Suwon finished her work, her tense nerves relaxed, and she felt tired all over. She yawned and asked Gu Huizi sleepily, do you have anything to explain to the prince? Go back. Gu Huizi said goodbye to Suwon. The prince regent maintained his previous posture, his dark eyes falling on the candy on the plate for a moment. He can go up mountains of swords and seas of fire, and is invincible and fearless. Dudu doesn't like taking medicine. Sick, injured, tough to carry. After Qi Min found out, in order to coax him to take medicine, she brought caramel today and candied fruit tomorrow. It was different every time, so she was used to carrying sweets with her. Suwon naturally took out the candy from the purse in her sleeve, and couldn't help but recall the memories of the regent that had been buried deep in her heart. The corner of her mouth lowered, Chi Minruo was really alive, she was the queen of Ziliang, and the man next to her was not Sujihong, but would eventually be another man. It was really a waste of pain, so cold-blooded and ruthless. The Prince Regent suddenly felt that the candy in the plate was an eyesore, and he was about to swing it to the ground with a flick of his sleeves. The moment it fell off the table, he caught it firmly in his hand, threw it on the table, and picked up the memorial again to review. Luo Cheng ordered people to prepare the medicinal bath, and when he brought it over, he saw that the regent's face was as sinking as water, covered with a layer of frost, and he looked very unhappy. He trembled with courage and said bravely, "Master, the medicinal bath is ready, it will be cold later." The Prince Regent looked gloomy and did not move. Luo Cheng secretly raised his eyes and looked over, and saw that the plate on the small table was empty, and the piece of candy was missing. Luo Cheng turned his eyes around, but found no trace of Maltang. He seemed to have discovered a new world. It turns out that the master refused to take medicine because there was no sugar. He said cautiously, "Are you going to take a bath? Are you going to prepare some candy? Roll." Luo Cheng rolled out of the inner room. Suwan and Gu Huizi returned to the yard and closed the door. "Huizi, my mother, is she really the queen of Ziliang Kingdom?" Suwan remembered that when she came back from Chi's house, Gu Huizi was dealing with official documents. Could it be about matters related to Ziliang Kingdom? "The information from the spy's investigation is what I said in front of the regent. As for whether it is the mother-in-law, it remains to be discussed." Gu Huizi rubbed his forehead and said warmly, "I have arranged for people to continue the investigation, and the regent has also. Zhang Cheng has been arranged, and there will be definite news soon. The author has something to say. Babies, see you tomorrow, good night, okay." The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 160. Gu Huizi organized the letter sent by the spies neatly and handed it to Suwan. Suwan took the information and looked at it for 10 lines. "I have mixed feelings." Nearly half a year after traveling back in time, Suwan successfully assumed the identity of the original owner without any violation. Therefore, when I learned that Chi Min was likely to be alive, I was shocked and stunned, followed by expectation and confusion. This is an instinctive reaction of the body. After reading the information, Suwan's surging emotions calmed down. Only complexity remains. There is a high possibility that the Queen of Ziliang will be her mother. According to the regent's temperament, he will definitely go to the Western Liang Kingdom after getting the exact news. It is unknown what will happen after that. But the only thing that is certain is that her identity is revealed and she is the daughter of the Queen of Ziliang. I am afraid it will cause a sensation in the Great Zhou dynasty and have a great impact on Gu Huizi's development. If they can't survive in the Zhou dynasty, they can still go to the Ziliang Kingdom. Her status will rise with the tide, and she can go sideways. But Gu Huizi's important task is to support Gu Jingyun to ascend to the throne and help him secure the throne. Suwan frowned. "Huizi, if the Queen of Ziliang is really my mother, I'm afraid your road to the imperial examination will be blocked. She was the princess of the Western Liang Kingdom. How could the imperial court dare to reuse Gu Huizi? I was afraid that he would be thrown into a remote rural area and become a small county magistrate, and he would not want to return to the capital and enter the center of power. In the end, we had to rely on the identity of the adopted son of the regent. At that time, the regent was not in charge of the Zhou dynasty, and all kinds of demons and ghosts would suppress him. The originally smooth road suddenly became rough." Gu Huizi was very tolerant and said with relief, "Heaven is going to entrust this man with a great responsibility, and he must first work hard on his mind and body. After their hard work, no one can defeat me." Suwan rolled her eyes. "Why don't you say that you have to endure hardships to become a master?" Mo Chen, who was eavesdropping at the window, couldn't help but open the window a crack, revealing his eyes. "Mother, the edge of the sword comes from sharpening, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold. Get out, Suwon clanged and closed the window. Mo Chen was confused and looked at Moun beside him with aggrieved eyes. Did I say something wrong? Moun saw his confused and cold expression, and even took a few steps aside to avoid being with Mo Chen for a long time and lowering his IQ. In Mo Chen's eyes, Moun was afraid of being accused and wanted to cut ties with him. Ruthless. Mo Chen was worried. Moun had always been upright. This time he drew a clear line. Could it be that he had made a serious mistake unintentionally? He raised his ears and closed the window again. There was no movement inside. Could it be that they were discussing his punishment? Mo Chen silently opened the window again, and suddenly felt a heavy atmosphere in the room. Suwon and Gu Huizi were locked in each other. Her heart skipped a beat, and she said tremblingly, "Mother, I just said that for Moun. He asked me to send another message, please punish him quickly and let him die quickly. Don't grind and scratch the flesh with a dull knife to torture people." Clang dash. Mo Chen immediately closed the window, looked at Moun with a straight face and touched his conscience. "Since you don't want to be brothers, then use them to block the knife." Moun gave him a cold look, jumped up, and disappeared into the yard. Suwon opened the door and saw Mo Chen sneaking around, trying to sneak out of the yard. "Where's Moun?" Suwon crossed her arms and pressed her shoulders against the doorframe. Mo Chen squatted under the window like a quail. Pulling his big sleeves, he said with a sad face, "My subordinates said that he fled out of fear of crime. Do you believe it? Then you take the responsibility for my brother," Suwon said with a smile but not a smile, "clean up the 2 shops in the capital." Mo Chen's eyes lit up instantly, and he immediately became lively and energetic. "Subordinate, go now." Suwon couldn't help laughing when she saw him rushing out of the yard in the blink of an eye, fearing that he would be too late and she would turn against him and demand a severe punishment. "Where did you find the living treasure?" Suwon wanted to ask Mo Chen, with his IQ, whether he had ever done anything wrong. Gu Huizi calmed down and said, "Just don't be confused when it comes to important matters. Suwon. Things haven't happened yet. Don't think too much. Maybe it won't be so bad." Gu Huizi tried to persuade Suwon in a warm voice. Looking at her tired face, his eyes became softer. "If anything happens, you'll still have me." Suwon spat, "You are the one who caused the most trouble. I couldn't survive in Dezhou, so I went to 11 Liang to seek refuge with my mother. She is the queen of 11 Liang. As a princess, how comfortable will my life be? If I were accidentally becoming the next generation of queen, with a harem of 3,000, this life is so nourishing." After saying this, Suwon couldn't help but feel excited. Gu Huizi's brain collapsed. Suwon let out a painful "oh," covered her forehead with her hands, and stared at Gu Huizi. "What are you doing?" Gu Huizi glanced at the sky and said, "It's getting late. Let's wash up and go to bed early." Hiss. This person was sarcastically telling her that dreams come faster. Suwon bared her teeth at him and said angrily, "Don't provoke me. I don't have any great abilities. I just have the ability to make my dreams come true." Gu Huizi sighed helplessly, put a hand on her shoulder, and gently hugged her. He rubbed her forehead with one hand, and whispered, "My wife, forgive me for being ignorant, and I will be your coachman tomorrow to make amends." Suwon was hugged and pressed by him, and she apologized softly. Her cheeks were hot, and she said uncomfortably, I just have an itchy mouth. If you just say something casually, don't take it seriously." She raised her hand to brush it away. Gu Huizi's hand touched his hot forehead. "You go to bed early, and I will think about the regent's treatment plan." Gu Huizi naturally knew that Suwon meant what he said, but he realized a problem. Suwon was really the princess of the Western Liang Kingdom, and the regent went to the western Liang kingdom to reveal this layer of identity. Sujihong has severed the father-daughter relationship with Suwan. Will the Queen of Ziliang recognize Suwan back? Can this marriage still count? Suwan's words gave him a crisis. He stared at Suwan with deep eyes, watching her sitting behind the desk writing furiously, and felt that if he wanted to stand by her side, he would have to be strong enough. Suwan didn't know the impact of a joke on Gu Huizi. She completed the treatment plan for the regent and put it in a drawer. He rubbed his stiff cervical spine, yawned and returned to the inner room. Gu Huizi had already fallen asleep on the bed. The hot water that Gu Huizi filled was already cold and only slightly warm. Suwan just took a bath, blew out the oil lamp, crawled from the end of the bed to the inside, got under the quilt, closed his eyes, and prepared to sleep. Suddenly, the person next to her moved, turned over, and lay on her side. Suwan suddenly became nervous and wanted to move inside. Her whole body fell into a warm embrace, and Gu Huizi's cold and cedar-like breath surrounded her.